Hey everyone, this is Mike and welcome to my guide to E8 Savage, aka Shiva. Last fight of this tier and a pretty tough one, I have to say. Not only for the mechanics but the DPS check, especially for week 1, was very tight as well. Now, just as any other fight in this patch, apparently all of the fights like to start with a rate-wide AoE and Shiva is no different. So she's going to be starting with Absolute Zero, one of the many rate-wide AoEs that she has. Just heal and shield through this one. You do want to have some decent mitigation for this one, because it does hit really hard. And then we are going to go into the very first mirror mechanic. This will spawn 3 mirrors on the arena. We're going to have 2 green ones and 1 red one. Now, the way the mirror mechanic works throughout the whole fight is that there's basically 3 kinds of mirrors. We have blue ones, green ones, and red ones. The blue mirrors will immediately copy what she's doing. The green mirrors will do her attack after she's done it, and then the red one will go last. So you can kind of look at it like this. Blue together with Shiva, green right after Shiva, red last. Kind of like a 1, 2, 3 priority system right there. Now, right after these mirrors spawn, there's always going to be one of 2 safe spots. It's either going to be between the 2 green mirrors or opposite of that safe spot, and then it's going to depend on which attack she's going to be doing. She can do either Driving Frost, which she's doing right now, or she can do Biting Frost. If she does Driving Frost, she basically is going to cleave everything that's behind her. If it is Biting Frost, she's going to do a whole arena cleave in front of her. Since it's Driving Frost right now, we're all going to be moving forward, and then we're going to stand next to the green mirror, which is at north. And then the mirrors are going to copy her. Now, if she did Biting Frost instead, the safe spot would be on the opposite side of the arena, somewhere over here. And the dodge that you do is kind of the same. You wait for the first AoEs to go out, you move to the other side of that same mirror, and then the second AoE goes out, and then you're safe. If it was the Biting Frost first, you would stand just about here, a little bit further away from the marker than we are here, because the Driving Frost gives you more space to dodge basically, because it's not as tight. But the dodge with the Biting Frost, you need to be standing further away from the middle of the arena, I guess you could call it. So we dodge all the AoEs here, and then we are going to be going in the first mechanical fuckfest, I guess you could call it, which is Diamond Frost. Not only is this a rate-wide AoE damaging ability, but it is also going to assign players with different roles that they have. So first of all, a tank as well as another player, I believe it's always a healer in this case, is going to be targeted with Frostbite. Now, as you can see here in the party list, it's both on the warrior and the scholar. This needs to be Asunat or they're going to be frozen. This is something that you want to happen later down in the fight, the frozen effect, but for now we want to cleanse this. So get your Asunas ready to get rid of this. Right after that, we're going to have the Shiva AoEs that are also in the old Shiva fight back from A Realm Reborn, as well as 2 others, well, one other mechanic, which is these circular AoEs that you're going to be seeing on 1 tank, 1 healer, and 2 DPS players. So this is very important to know, because then you can kind of pre-position. We gave 1 and 3 to our tank and healer respectively, and then we used 2 and 4 to place our DPS markers. So that's the first part of the mechanic. Place those AoEs. Now, after these go off, all of the players that had one of these circular AoEs will get a heavy debuff, so they're going to be slowed for quite a while. Because of this, you want to position the next set of mechanics slightly different. So for now, everybody's going to stack up either north or south of the boss, where the first Shiva AoEs spawned, and then we're going to be knocked back to the other side of the arena. These star AoEs drop down on where we dropped our puddles before, but I'll go through the mechanic again. Then we get knocked back. By now the first AoE has disappeared, so this allows us to just stay here, and then 1 tank and 1 healer, the ones that didn't get the AoE on them, will get this splash AoE thing, proximity AoE, so that is why you want to be on the edge of the arena for this one. And this AoE will go out together with the big AoEs from the middle. You can't really see it because there are just so many AoEs going off, but that's pretty much that. And then the 2 DPS that are left over, that did not get the slow, they will get a AoE that follows them around. So as you can see, our ninja here is going to be dodging left and right, leaving behind some AoEs on the floor, and the same for our machinist there. And then to finish it off, she is going to be doing the reverse of what she did at the beginning. So since she did the Driving Frost, at the start of the mechanic, she's now going to be doing the Biting Frost instead. This will always be the reverse of what she did before, so if this were to be Driving Frost instead, the tank can just pre-position her to face the middle of the arena, and then the rest of the party doesn't even have to worry about this mechanic at all. So if you are a good main tank and you remember what she did before, you can basically make the lives of the 7 other people in your party so much easier by pre-positioning the boss correctly for the mechanic. So I'm just gonna rewind again a little bit to show you again from the beginning. So the mechanic starts off with giving everyone a, well, basically rate-wide AoE. First things first, cleanse those Frostbite stacks. Look at where the first Shiva AoE spawns. They either spawn north and south or east and west, and then depending on where they spawn you need to adjust your positioning. Then all of the AoEs go onto the 1, 2, 3, 4 markers that we have placed. 1 tank, 1 healer and 2 DPS. Then we position ourselves to get knocked back into what is now going to be the safe spots. And then we go over there. And then the 2 remaining, the remaining tank and healer that did not get a puddle is going to get a flare. So tank goes north, healer goes south in our case. And then the 2 remaining DPS that didn't get a puddle will get following AoEs. The way we handle this is kind of different depending on what role we had. We had our melees go to the not so safe east and west sides in this case, because it's the last AoE that's gonna go off. Because the timing from them basically getting knocked back to this AoE going off is incredibly tight. So if you're a normal range DPS or a caster that doesn't have a gap closer, this would kill you like 30% of the time, because with server ticks and that kind of stuff this can be very risky. If you're, for example, like in this case a ninja or a dragoon, they can just use their movement ability to just get out of the AoE really quickly, which is why they take that spot. The reason why this is much better for our healers is because our healers are in the back and one of them is slowed. So it's gonna be harder for the healer to dodge out of this AoE if, for example, say like our range does, we place it back there. If I or my machinist in this case had the follow AoEs, we would go south because we have a much harder time dodging out of this AoE here on the side than our melees do. So that's kind of the way how you can handle this mechanic. And then of course, just like before, the reverse of what she did in the first one. Then after this is going to be our tank buster, which is called Double Slap. This is a Vogue Shirk tank buster, so you do need a tank swap, because the tank does get vulnerability up. This is a physical tank buster, so you can use stuff like Feint for this one. But you can either just invuln it, or you can just use some pretty decent mitigation for it, because the tank buster hurts a lot. Then we are going to go into the next mechanic, which is going to make Shiva transform from her normal form into her Hydaelyn form. And basically for this one, just look away, because this will stun you. Now, the way you can kind of time this is by using the text box as an indicator, since there is no cast bar on either her or her aggro list kind of thingy. It's kind of difficult to just predict when it's going to happen. So what you can do instead is look at this little like loading icon, I guess you could say, on the right of her text box. And a little bit after the text box is gone, that's when the mechanic goes off. But just play this one safe, because if you fail this one, you're most likely going to die to the next mechanic, because this stuns you, and then when the next mechanic goes off, you of course can't dodge it. If you do happen to be stunned, ask your healers for a shield, because if you get like a single target shield or something like that, then you will most likely live through this mechanic with a damage down, and while taking also a lot of damage. Now, the mechanic immediately following this up is either going to be Sidekick or Axe Kick. Sidekick is a donut AoE around her, so to dodge this, either go in her hitbox or do what me and the healers are doing, run all the way away from her. Axe Kick is a AoE around her, so you just have to dodge that one. The one that she does here is going to be reversed later in the fight, so just like we had with the Biting Frost and the Driving Frost, this is exactly the same as well. So since we have the donut here, our melee is gonna go under the boss, our ranged are gonna go all the way away from the boss, so that we are all safe. After this, she's going to be jumping towards the middle of the arena and do yet another raid-wide attack called Light Rampart. Now, not only is this a raid-wide attack, but it is also going to be giving everyone debuffs. There are two different roles in this specific mechanic. The first role is the chains, which I happen to be getting here. The second role is the orbs. Depending on what role you have, you're going to be moving differently. And you're also going to be taking different towers. Now, what's very important is that for the final tower that is gonna go off, you basically have a random chance of being the person that needs to be in the tower. Because as you can see, we have all got a debuff over here, which I have 1 stack of. Some people have 2 stacks of it, and depending on how many stacks you have, this will tell you when you have to take that mid tower, yes or no. Basically, every time you get hit by a mechanic, you are going to be giving 1 stack. If you have 5 stacks, you explode and wipe the raid. So that is why in the end of the mechanic, for the final one, which is the final tower, only players with a 3rd stack or with 3 stacks can take that tower, because everybody else is gonna have 4 stacks, and if they take the tower, they explode and wipe the raid. So to do this, we handle it like follows. We give 1 and 2 to our tank and our healer. We have 3 and 4 for our DPS. And then we're gonna move kind of like following. So when you look at these towers, they all have these little cogwheels on them with like a small niblet on the cardinal or the intercardinal sides of this. This is basically where we are kind of going to be standing with our chains. Normally, if you handle this in a different way, because there's a bunch of ways that you can handle this mechanic, the way we do it makes it brain dead for the people that get chains. Because everything that the people with chains do is they just stand still. They hit the boss and they stand still. Also, don't use gap closers and that kind of stuff, because that can fuck over the chains. Because if you come too close or you go too far from each other, the chain will break, and that will make everybody explode and wipe the raid. Now, it's very important to note as well is that the chain has 2 different states. Right now, we have the normal chain indicating that we are chained together, but once this timer reaches 0, that is when the chain locks in. So right now, I can, for example, as a red mage, use my backflip and be fine. But once the second chain AoE or the second chain debuff comes out, that is when we need to be in that pre-position to make sure that we're not too far or too close from each other. Any combination of players tethered together works when you're standing in these exact positions. So that is why it's really easy for us, because if you do it another way, like for example how a friend of mine did it, is you have to like fold your tethers together and away from each other and that kind of stuff. So it was very like complicated, I guess you could say, because there were like 3 or 4 different ways to handle like the same mechanic. So it was harder to learn. This makes it really brain dead. So we have the players with our tethers stack up in the towers. Around this time, the other 4 players will get tethered to an orb. The way we handle the orbs is very simple. We're going to be dragging them immediately through the middle of the arena. They won't explode until they touch a player. So the orbs can touch each other and that kind of stuff. So they are going to be going to the opposite side. Towers explode. We just need 1 player in these towers, so that is all fine. Right after the towers explode, there's also going to be cleaves going out on the 4 closest players to the boss. So this is why we stand in this specific position, because now all of the chained people will get those 4 AoEs, and because the other players with the orbs, because they pulled their orbs through the middle, thus staying on the cardinals, they'll automatically dodge this cleave as well. So I'm just going to show it once again real quick. Everybody positions on their little niblet on the cogs, the players run through the middle, cleaves go out. Right after this, there's going to be 1 tower south, 1 tower north. So what we're going to be doing is the players that are east and west are going to be rotating clockwise. As you can see, our Dragoon is going to run over here, and then the player that was here is going to run to my left side. And they're going to be soaking both of the towers. Right after those towers go out, the chain debuff will disappear, thus allowing the players that were chained together to move more freely. And what we're now going to do is we're going to kind of make the AoEs go closer together. So all 4 of the chained people are going to move closer to east and west, making it so that north and south has a bigger safe spot, so that all of our players can basically eat their orbs, because they do have a relatively big AoE. So Path of Light, gonna be giving us that big cleave. And then all of the orb players touch their orb, thus making it explode, and then resolving that mechanic. And then right now, as you look in the aggro list, we have 4 people with 4 stacks, we have 4 people with 3 stacks. all of the players with 3 stacks run into the middle to eat the final tower, and that resolves the mechanic. So I'm going to show it one more time, because this one is a pretty hefty one, and this will probably be the first big roadblock of this fight as well. It took us quite a while to get this one done, but once you get this one done, it should be pretty alright from there on out. So chains go into the towers, stand on their niblet, all of the other players in the middle, see which orb they are tethered towards. First cleaves go out. Then orbs come together in the towers to soak both of the towers. They soak, they go out. Chained people lose their chain, come closer together to get the second AoEs. And then the orb people take their orbs, and then everybody that has 3 stacks on their debuff soaks the last remaining tower. And that is the first big mechanic. Oh, I forgot to mute the thing. There we go. And then we're going to go into the final mechanic of this phase, which is yet another mirror. Now, this is where she's going to be doing the reverse mechanic of what she did before. So since she did the, I forgot the name, basically since she did the donut AoE around her before, it means that she now is going to be doing the normal AoE around her. So she's going to do the X kick. So you can see X kick, everybody goes far away from the boss. And after this goes off, everybody, or all of the mirrors, are going to be copying that mechanic as well, thus making the middle of the arena our next safe spot. So she does her X kick, everybody goes to the middle, and then all of the mirrors are going to do their X kick, and then we do one of 2 things. So what is important to note here is that people are getting a stack marker. There's 4 of them, so we need to split into groups of 2. Now, one important thing to note here is that this is random. And this is basically a bait mechanic as well. So if I move back a little bit, you can see that as she starts casting Banish, you can't really see it that well, but she gets a little circle above her head. And if there is only 1 orb on this circle, as you can see right here, I'm gonna... Oh, I can't rewind it with my arrow keys. It's kind of sad. But since there's only 1 orb around her head, that means that this is a real mechanic. If she would have 4 orbs around her head, it would mean that this was a fake, and everybody would be getting a AoE around them instead. So the way you handle this is you just assign groups of 2 on each specific marker, and then if it is fake, you also like kind of allocate positions for everyone. Now there is a second way to tell whether or not this is real or fake. Now the first way to tell is whether or not she has 4 orbs around her head or 1. 1 is real, 4 is fake. The second way to see it is actually the AoE indicator. So as you can see here, oh wait, there we go. This is a normal stack AoE indicator, I guess you could call it. But if this one has circles around it, which maybe I'll have it in like a previous pull, I'll check in just a second. But if they have circles around their AoE marker, that means that it's a debate and that is going to change mechanics. But since they didn't have the circles, they're real, and then that is basically the end of phase 1. I'm gonna really quickly go back to a previous pull, because this was a little bit more than just one of them. So again, X kick over here, we all go to the edge, we all move in. And as you can see, this is the debate one. So she now has 4 AoEs on top of her head, or like 4 orbs, but the AoE indicator itself was also different. And then as you can see, all 8 players get an AoE around them. So I'll show it again real quick. Instead of just looking at the orbs on her head for this one, you can also look at these circles around the AoE. I didn't really get a clean shot of it, but once you've seen it once, it's pretty easy to identify. So we move back in. As you can see, it's not just the arrows, but there is also like this really tiny line around the thing, which is basically the circular AoE, and that's also the way that you know that this is going to change into this other mechanic. So that's kind of like the first debate mechanic that you're going to be seeing. There is a second one, but we'll show that one once we get there. So I'm gonna fast forward again to this part, and then we're going to go into the add phase. The way the add phase works is important that you basically split up your team correctly. So she's going to jump away, you're going to be going left and right in groups of 4, 1 tank, 1 healer, 2 DPS. This attack that she's gonna do, Shattered World, does not do damage, so you don't have to worry about shielding or anything. Actually, do shield, because there is going to be an AoE later down the line in this ad phase, and the shields and stuff that you give here will still apply for that as well. Now, one of the most important things that you do here when you assign which player goes where is that you send the ranged DPS on the left side. There is a reason for that, and I'll talk about that when we get there, but the ranged physical DPS, which is Bard, Machinist or Dancer, needs to be on the left. So we just stand here, heal up, get shields, whatever, do what you want basically. And then we go into the ad phase. This does stun you for a bit, so you can't use actions during this. So if, for example, you have to refresh your Houton or your Blood of the Dragon, stuff like that, then make sure you use that there. You can keep a Blood of the Dragon throughout this whole transition, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah. Then we go into the ad phase, which is kind of a clusterfuck, I guess you could say, when you first do it, but once you've done it a few times, it's very important to allocate your DPS correctly, and also to use your, not necessarily mitigation, but what's it called, utility correctly as well, which is going to come in the form of stuns and silences. The silence is the reason why the Bard is on the left side, or the ranged is on the left side. So it's going to start out with a raid-wide AoE, and then the first set of ads will spawn. Now, depending on which side you are on, different ads will spawn as well. This thing over here on the right is always going to be there, but as you can see we have an Aqueous Aether here and we have an Earthen Aether at the back here. These will only spawn on the right side. On the left side they will have Thunder ones and I believe an Aqueous as well, so they have a different set of ads to take care of, which I don't have a POV of that, but basically they are different, but I'll talk about how to handle each ad when we see all of them. So first of all, the most important thing to do is this tether right here. This ad does not attack necessarily, and you also don't have to kill it, but you do have to take this tether. Now there are going to be 4 of these throughout the whole ad phase, meaning that each of these players need to take one of these. Once this tether goes off, it will create an AoE around you and give you a debuff. If you take one of these debuffs on accident, you're gonna die, basically. So don't stand in the AoE if it's not your turn to take this one. So I'm going to be the first one to take this one, and then as you can see, it does drop in a fairly okay AoE around you. The warrior barely didn't get hit by it, which was good because otherwise he would have died when he had to take his, because as you can see, 44 seconds on the debuff is going to last for quite a while. Now what is important here on the ad phase is that you have your silence and your stuns ready. So what we're going to be doing here, the way you handle this is as follows. The Aqueous Aether is insanely tanky, so that is usually one of your first priorities to DPS down, in certain cases. But on the other hand, you can stun it, so to make it go to the middle slower, because once they reach the crystal, that's when they blow up and your Flood of Light gauge goes up, which you don't want to have happen, because if your Flood of Light gauge is at 0 when you finish the ad phase, you're going to be getting a 1 minute long DPS buff, which if you're going for a week 1 clear, you need this thing basically. You don't necessarily need it if you have a really good team, but my team, even with a clean run and having this DPS buff, we still hit Enrage. So very important for now at least, that you do your best to try and get this buff. Now the Earthen Aether over here is important that you have a silence ready for it. As you can see, interrupted over here, this thing will basically try to cast Stone Skin. If it gets Stone Skin, it becomes insanely tanky as well, so you want to silence that one as soon as possible. This is the reason why the Bard is on the other side, because the Earthen Aethers on the left side will spawn in consecutive rounds. So for us on the right side, the Earthen Aether is in the first and in the last set of ads, meaning that just a tank can take care of the silences. On the other side, I believe they're in the second and the third round, so that's why you need the tank to silence the first one and the Bard or the Machinist Dancer to silence the second one. So that's why ranged is on the left. So Earthen Aether, silence, Aqueous Aether, stun. It's important that both your melee as well as your tank use the stuns to give you as much time as possible to DPS that down, because this thing has an insane amount of HP. As you can see, it's going down very slowly. Another AoE in the middle, basically in between each ad wave, there is going to be a raid-wide AoE from the crystal. And then we have our last type of ad, which is the Electric Aether. This is incredibly squishy. So literally if you have some really high hitting stuff, You can just one-shot these almost, as you can see, boom, it's almost gone. But important to note is that these have lightning spikes. This will basically do counter damage every time you touch it. So for example, if you hit it with a very high hitting attack, that's not necessarily going to be a problem because it's just going to die from one attack. But for example, say you're a ninja or I'm a red mage doing my melee combo, which is very quickly back to back, and then also using my overloadable cooldowns on it, every time I touch it with an action, it is going to give me return damage. So be careful with these that you don't just do a crazy amount of GCDs on them or something like that, because it's going to hurt a lot. So basically be careful with those. They do die really quickly, but they also deal return damage to you. Then again, another Raid White into the next set, in this case another 2 Electrics and an Equius on my side. And then of course this thing also spawns every round, so you just need to have different players take care of that one. And then you basically just kill all the ads before they reach the middle. Also important, don't stand in the middle or around the edge of the arena, because this will give you a bleed, and it's a very nasty bleed. It will tick for about 50,000 damage per tick. So if that happens together with the Raid White AoE, you can be sure that you're going to be dead basically. So definitely do not want that to happen. And then we have our last set of ads, which in our case is the Earthen Aether, which again needs to be silenced. And then the light AoE here as well, which needs to be soaked by the final player. And then if you've done it, you can sit back, relax, look at the beautiful cutscene, and enjoy the damage buff that you are now going to be getting if nothing reached the middle. You can also not take this light AoE from the light ad and just have that one go to the middle, for example, if you're fucked up. Especially during prog, you can just let one of the things go in, because as long as you don't reach 100% flood of light, you're not gonna die. But when it comes down to trying to clear it, of course, you do want to make sure that you get that damage buff, because every damage buff that you can get in this fight, you basically want. Because I don't think I've had this tight, or I've seen this tight of a DPS check on a final fight in quite some time. So this one is pretty tight, especially for a week 1 clear. Later down the line, of course, with gear, this will become pretty much like nothing, and you won't really need the DPS buff. But even though, like, when you have better gear, you're of course going to have a much easier time clearing the ad phase correctly as well and stuff like that. So it doesn't really matter too much when you have gear. But if you don't have gear and you're trying to go for an early clear, then having that DPS buff is going to be very nice. As you can see right here, 1 minute on Grace of Light. It's not a crazy DPS buff, but it does give you a decent amount extra. And anything that you can get extra, you basically want for now. First mechanic that she does is Morn. Very important to note, this will go on both of the tanks. So you're basically going to be splitting in the same groups that we just used for the ad phase, 1 left, 1 right. And then this is like a normal Morn, where it hits a few times. It's just that it also gives you debuffs. As you can see, Hated of Frost, and they get Hated of the Worm. So you just need to make sure you're in the same group. If, for example, I was to run to the other group, I would just get one shot. So that wouldn't work. And then right after that, we have a Morn Afa. After, I believe, every Morn, there is gonna be a Morn Afa. Oh no, that's not true. But for this one, at least, it is true. Morn Afa is the same as in the Unending Coil of Bahamut. This is a very high-hitting Raid White AoE on one player. But what's very important to know about this one is that Morn Afa always targets the main tank. So because you know this, you can use tank invulns for this one. So we actually have our warrior use his home gang to eat this one, because he doesn't need his home gang for anything else at the moment. So that's why he invulns that one. It looked like he didn't really take damage, but that was probably because he had like a crit excog or something like that with recitation. But yeah, basically we like invulning the first one. I'm not sure if you can do it with other tanks. Probably can, because you can use potions here and then potions later again as well. So I think every tank except the paladin can use an invuln on this one. So yeah, that's how we're gonna handle the first one, and that's how we're gonna handle 2 more Morn Afas later down the fight as well. And that basically allows us to save a whole lot of Raid White mitigation for some of the upcoming mechanics as well, to make them a whole lot smoother. And you also have Limit Break 3 around this point as well, so make sure you use LB3 at some point, because you can get a second one towards the end of the fight. Now, I have heard people say that you can use LB3 after your damage buff is gone, because right now we still all have about 20 seconds left on the damage buff, but you are going to have to use the Limit Break during the dodge that is next. So as you can see, mirrors have spawned again. We have one blue one, one green one, and one red one. If you remember the order in the beginning, blue goes together with Shiva, green goes afterwards, red goes last. Now, what is also important to know here is that depending on where the blue mirror spawns, you're going to be dodging either clockwise or counterclockwise. The green one will always be north, the red and the blue one can switch positions. If blue is on the left, that means you're gonna dodge clockwise. If blue is on the right, that means you're gonna dodge counterclockwise. And then the mechanic that Shiva is going to be doing is called Hallowed Wings. This is kind of like God Kefka, if you've ever done that fight, which is E8S Savage. So one half of the arena is gonna be cleaved by her wing. Now you can use the arena itself, because this is like nice sections for each corner of the arena, to dodge this. The AoE animation of this skill also comes incredibly slow, so you can actually dodge into the safe spot a whole lot quicker than you might actually think that you have time for. So Hallowed Wings, if you remember, blue goes off together with Shiva. Now blue is on the left, meaning that the southern side of the map is basically going to be like not safe, so we all are going to be moving towards 1. Because right side of Shiva is cleaving, right side of the mirror is cleaving, meaning that this little quadrant that we're gonna stand in right now is going to be our safe spot. Then the green mirror is gonna do that, so the whole western side of the arena is gonna be covered, but since we know we have to go clockwise, we just go 1 quadrant clockwise, and then we have to go 1 more quadrant clockwise for the final one, because then she's gonna do Hallowed Wings with the other wing, and then the red mirror is going to do his one as well, which is going to be the north side in this case. But basically it doesn't matter which wing that she does here or what the red mirror is going to do. If you know dodge clockwise or dodge counterclockwise, depending on the blue mirror spawning left or right, this will always take care of itself, and it works 100% of the time. So you don't actually have to pay attention to anything that's happening here. Just identify clockwise, counterclockwise, and identify the first safe spot. Once the AoEs goes off, you're in the first safe spot, that's when you're free to move. So I'm gonna rewind real quick again. Mirror, mirror, spawns the mirrors. Blue light means clockwise, blue right, oh no, blue left is clockwise, blue right is counterclockwise. Identify the first safe spot, since it was clockwise. As soon as these go off, we can start moving into the first thing, clockwise, second one goes out, and we move into the third one, which is going to be our final safe spot. And there we go. That's how you handle this mechanic. So as long as you know clockwise, counterclockwise, and then the first safe spot, you're basically good to go. Also, these AoEs, the actual animation goes out super late, but you can run into this animation, don't worry about it. As soon as the cast bar is done, you're safe. Also important to note, which is especially for later down the line as well, is that all of the mirrors show up in your aggro list, and they also have a cast bar, so you can keep track of what the mirror is doing through your aggro list. So if you don't have your aggro list somewhere on the screen where you can see it, do that. It's going to help you a tremendous amount. Next mechanic is Worm's Lament. This is the first one. There's going to be 2 of them in total. And for this first one, all of the tanks and healers are going to get a red debuff. All of the DPS are going to be getting a blue one. What this means is, red debuff pops the head, blue one picks up the puddle that the head leaves behind. Now, there are timers for this, which I will show you in just a second if I can find the thing. There we go. These are basically the timers. I know it's a little bit small, but basically we have 14, 22, 30 and 35 on our red debuffs. We have 20, 28, 35 and 44 on our blues. Now you don't necessarily need to have this information, because you can kind of look at the number like 1, 1, 4, 2, 2, 2, 3, 30, 4, 35. So you can kind of know like on the first number that you get in your timer which order you're going to be going in. But knowing the exact timers can be useful for some people. For example, what I did, as you can see right here, I have this little red macro. I just basically wrote down those timers, and every time Worm's Lament started casting, I would just press that macro, and in the chat it would pop up with the timers, and then everybody would know their order basically to go and take these debuffs. So what's gonna happen first is the first red debuff is going to pop the head, as I like to call it, thus creating a buff that needs to be picked up by the blue one. Now, the way how you do this is red goes first, Shiva will do an AoE, red 2, blue 1 goes, Shiva will do an AoE, red 3, blue 2 goes, Shiva will do an AoE, red 4, blue 3, Shiva does an AoE, blue 4, end of mechanic. So as you can see right here, the head is going to spawn in right now. As you can see, it dropped down right there. So our first tank is gonna pop it, or our first tank slash healer is gonna pop it, because in this case it was our scholar. She does an AoE. Then red 2 goes to pop the head, and then our first DPS goes to cleanse. She does an AoE. Red 3 goes to pop the head. Blue 2 is going to pick up the debuff, which our ninja just Sukuchi'd in. She does an AoE. Red 4 and blue 3 go and do their thing. She does an AoE. And then last but not least, blue 4 is going to pick up the last AoE. It's like a tiny puddle. It's kind of hard to see at some point, but if you kind of pay attention to where the head dropped it, it's not too difficult to go and pick that up. Now, right after this, she's going to transform back into her base Shiva form. Whenever she transforms, things will happen. So, when she transforms into normal Shiva, she freezes the floor. If she transforms into Heidelin Shiva, she will basically do the gaze attacks, you have to look away. And then if she transforms into Refulgence Shiva, there's going to be Akrais, but we'll see that in just a second. So what's just important for this one, since she is going to transform into the normal Shiva again, as you can see, Resplendent Eyes grant me strength. Once that is done, she's transforming back into normal Shiva, and now thin eyes around the floor. If you happen to be moving during this, you're going to get yeeted to the other side of the arena. If you're standing on a cardinal, or intercardinal as well, and you go through the middle of the arena, you will survive. If you're standing in the middle, you're not gonna survive. So for now, stand still, don't do anything, just make sure that you're close to the boss or close on the flank slash back of the boss, because the next mechanic that's going to be happening. Here she can do one of two mechanics again. She can either do Twin Silence or Twin Stillness. Twin Silence will make an AoE behind her go off first, and then in front of her. Twin Stillness will do front first, back second. So the way how I like to kind of memorize this is stand in the back as your first safe spot, and then if she does Stillness, stand still, basically. That's kind of like how I like to memorize it. If not, you can just learn the mechanic, of course. But that's kind of like my memory kind of help thingy to remember this mechanic. Since it is silence, the back is unsafe first, so we're all going to be moving to the front as soon as this ice disappears. So that's why you want to be positioned in between the back and the flank, so that you can move across really quickly. And then as soon as this goes out, we're going to be moving into the back, and then she cleaves the front as well. If it was stillness, she would cleave the front first, and then the back second. So kind of coordinate with your team, or just kind of like get used to the timing. It goes really quickly, as you can see. I'm just gonna rewind a tiny bit. So Twin Silence, basically as soon as the cost bar is done, that's when you wanna move back in and then get done. So if you position yourself on this kind of line right here between back and flank, it's very easy to just quickly dodge back in and you will be fine. Following this is gonna be another double slap, so just since we already used our invuln on the first Morn, tank is just gonna use a bunch of cooldowns for this one. Double slap hits incredibly hard, so use your stuff for this. Like as you can see, there's also a reprisal on here to make sure that he doesn't die, and he's still gonna drop low even with shields that he was given from our Astro and stuff like that as well. Since it does leave behind physical vulnerability, make sure that you do a tank swap here as well, because otherwise that tank is going to die, because it does last for quite a while. Now, right here, she's going to redress into Refulgence. So, as she says, come to me, Refulgence. She's going to go naked again, then the dragon will appear. And as soon as the wings come out, that's kind of your tell. That is when you should start moving for Akrai. And then it will kind of drop on the back. So I'm gonna show that real quick again. We have our Twin Silence go out, we have our double slap. And then everybody positions themselves on the back of the boss after the tank buster for her to transform into Refulgence. And then as soon as you see the wings pop out, right now, that's when you move. and then you will leave behind the Akrais. There is no other indicator than just the wings every time that mechanics goes off, so do keep that in mind. And then she's going to be spawning 2 mirrors. We have one on the left, one on the right, or east and south, east and west. One will be blue, one will be blue. Can I even speak? One will be green, the other will be red. Again, Shiva first, green second, red third. And the follow-up mechanic is that she's going to dash either north or south. This is random, which one that she goes to. I believe it has to do with the position of the mirrors where she's going to be jumping, but I haven't completely tested this. To be honest, just stand in the middle of the arena and then move behind Shiva, whether she jumps east or like north or south. What you then do is you get behind her because the hallowed wings are gonna cleave through the whole arena. And this will not only hit the whole arena, this will also knock you back, which is really important for the next mechanic that's gonna come up. So since the mirrors are going to be reflecting this, the green one goes first, then the red one, you are gonna need to pre-position in your light parties again. And not only that, but your tanks have an extra responsibility here too. So I'm gonna show you the mechanic first and then I'm gonna explain it. So green one goes out. I use my Surecast here, so you can use arm's length and Surecast to not get knocked back. And then the red one will go out. There we go. This time I do get knocked back because I did, like my Surecast was gone. Now, as you can see here in the party list, everybody has magic vulnup. So the way how you have to handle this mechanic is you need your tank in front to soak the first hit, because the first hit does increase damage. Then you need light party 1 on the first one and light party 2 on the second one. Just like you split up for the ad phase, just like you split up for the Ak Morns. So the way you handle this is you have your tank stand in front, then you have the 2 DPS and the healer of that tank's group stand second, then the tank of the second group stands third, and then the DPS and healer of that second group stand last, and then you're going to be switching this around for the second knockback. So first you move to the safe spot behind Shiva, then you either run towards the mirror or you use your arm's length and that kind of stuff. You line up, so tank, other people in their party, tank of party 2, party 2. So me and the Astro just use our Surecasts here so we can keep more uptime on the boss basically. And then here we're doing the reverse, so tank of party 2 in front, DPS and healer of party 2 second, tank of party 1 that just got the knockback first, and then DPS and healer of party 2 middle. Also important for your tanks, use cooldowns for this. This hurts a lot. We also have Divine Veil, we had Shake before this as well, we also have Seraphic Veil, and we have the neutral sect shields from our Astro, and as you're gonna see, we still take a lot of damage. So these things hit hard. And that's how you handle the mechanic. So have enough rate white mitigation, tank, party, and then you do the reverse with the other party in front, tank, party again. So that's how you handle the mechanic. Does a lot of damage. Also make sure your tanks use cooldowns for this one. And then we go into, I believe, the next mirror mechanic. Yes. This one is going to spawn a lot of mirrors. So the way this one works is you will either have 2 blue mirrors, north and south, and 2 red mirrors, east and west. These 2 can switch positions, and then you also have green mirrors on all of the intercardinals. Basically, the only thing that this makes important, like the only thing that is important for here to know, is where you're gonna pull Shiva. You can technically dodge all of this in the middle, but I personally think it's a lot easier if you pull Shiva to the edge of the arena. So we're going to be pulling Shiva towards one of the blue mirrors. We always pull her either north or east, so just arrange that with your team where you want to be pulling her. And then she is going to redress into Hydaelyn. Remember, Hydaelyn means look away from the boss. Since the blue mirrors are also going to be going off simultaneously, you also want to look away from the blue mirror. So her being positioned right here means we can just look in between these 2 mirrors over here and we are going to be safe. So they all go off. If you now pay attention to your aggro list, you can also see that these all have a cost bar, so you can use that cost bar to know when you have to look away. In general, you can get 2 GCDs off in between every time that she does a reflection basically. So right now we DPS, we look outside, If you basically look at where the blue mirror was, you'll be fine. If you pulled Shiva much closer to the wall, you can basically stand here and just keep DPSing her without having to worry about looking away. But since in our group Shiva is not positioned all the way at the wall, it means that we do all have to look away. And over here, very important, this AoE that comes from the middle is a fake one, yet again. So it's either true or false with this one. If it's true, like it is in our group, as you can see, one orb, you need to stay at the edge. If it is a fake one, she's basically going to be doing a bunch of AoEs on the side of the arena instead, so we'll all have to run towards the middle. But since this one was fake because there's only one orb, we're all going to be staying here at the edge, and then last but not least, the two red mirrors go out, so we just look out again, and we are safe, and then the Wraith White AoE goes off. So I'm going to look real quick back into my previous pull to see if we maybe had the opposite happen, so I can kind of show you what it looks like. If not, then so be it. So we have our Hallowed Wings, Twin Silence, Double Slap. We have our knocks across the arena, and then she redresses into Refulgence. So look away from the blue mirrors. No, this one is real as well. Look away from the greens, look away from the reds, and then the AoE goes out. If this one wasn't like real, basically around the edge there would be a bunch of proximity AoEs and everybody would run towards the middle. Instead of looking outwards like we do here, you can basically stand middle and look to north or south, and you'll also be fine. So I'm gonna... ooh, I am way too far ahead. There we go. So I'll just show you the mechanic again. You can see it once more, and then we'll go into the next mechanic right after that. Again, very useful that you have your aggro list up here and in a position where you can take care of it or can look at it, because this is going to be very useful to determine when the mirrors are going to be exploding, when you have to look outside of the arena. Right after this, she's going to do one of two basically double mechanics, either Embittered Dance, which is doing here, or Spiteful Dance. Embittered Dance is going to be Donut into normal AoE. Spiteful Dance is going to be normal AoE into Donut AoE. The way we kind of memorize this is with Spiteful. It's like she's being spiteful towards our melee DPS because they have to run away. That's kind of like what we used to memorize this. You can use something else, of course, but that's what we did. But basically, Embittered, Donut into normal, Spiteful, normal into Donut. Again, if you're ranged, you can just outrange both of these attacks. So this is the circular or the Donut AoE, and then she does the circular AoE, and this can be reversed depending on which of the two mechanics it is. And then we are going to be positioning her in the middle again for the next mechanic, which is going to be a mirrored mechanic yet again. This time it's only one mirror though, which is a red one. And as you can see, come to me Refulgence, she's going to be transforming again, so everybody stacks up on the back. As soon as the wings go out, we move, the Akrai's go out, but reflected. So basically, as soon as this mirror is done casting, he's going to be doing another Akrai. Now, when the mirror does the Akrai, Shiva is also casting Morn. So again, stack up on the front of the boss this time, and then we're going to be splitting left and right into our light parties again for the Morn. So we all split out, the Akrai explodes on the front of the boss, and then on the back we have our two Morns with our party stacks. This time another Morn Afa right after, so make sure that this time around you use plenty of mitigation for this one, because Morn Afa hurts a lot. And then we're going to be going into our final dance mechanic, I guess you could call it. Kind of like we had in the first one, with our... I already forgot the name of the mechanic, but basically with all of the towers and that kind of stuff, we're going to be having that again with Icelit Dragon Song. This is usually the last big wall to kind of figure out what to do, but basically everything that needs to happen is similar to before, but this time around there's also these big ice AoEs that we had on the first mechanic from Shiva that we had as well, that was on the DPS. This time around your rolls are completely set in stone for one mechanic, like all up till one mechanic basically. So our tanks and healers are going to be in the middle, soaking one of these 4 towers. All of our DPS are going to be moving out on the cardinals of the arena, dropping their star AoEs. All of our tanks, our healers, are also going to be tethered together in a square formation. This formation will always be the same as well, by the way, so you can completely pre-position for this one. The only thing that's important is that your tanks are north and south, and that your healers are east and west for the Draconic Strike, which is a knockback that you cannot use knockback invulnerability for. But because of that, we're gonna have another way on handling this. As before, in the first mechanic, we again have 4 players that have the ice debuff. It's going to be on both of the tanks, as well as on 2 of the DPS, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think it can be on a healer. But the way we handle this is we only cleanse the DPS, and we let the tanks get frozen. Because if the tanks are frozen, they won't get knocked back by the Draconic Strike. So, I'm just gonna show you the mechanic real quick now. All of the DPS drop their puddles on the cardinals. You can kind of use this line of the AoE of the arena to position this one. Then we all slowly walk towards the middle, because we are of course slowed with this lethargy debuff. I don't remember what it's called. We all get knocked back. Now our healers are getting knocked back into towers. Our tanks are frozen into the middle. Then all of these star AoEs go out, so we just stay on the edge until these go out. And then our tanks need to take care of 2 mechanics. So as you can see, he got another stack marker. This one is another true or false. So either look at the boss, does she have 1 or 4 orbs? 1 orb true, 4 orbs false. Or I believe you can also just look at the stack AoE marker itself. I'm going to be looking outside of the arena, so you can't really see it. But that's basically what's happening over there. They either need to stack together or spread out. If it's spread, then of course they just need to both be away. But there is also a tower in the middle that needs 2 players, so both of your tanks need to stand in that. These stack markers, the one that tanks have, also is a very hard hitting tank buster. Now since there are no more tank busters in this fight, just blow all of the cooldowns that you have here. There is no reason to save cooldowns basically, so that is the banish. And then all of the DPS players are also going to be chased by those normal AoEs. So as you can see, tanks are in the middle, they just soak their tower. Now they're going to be resolving the stack or the spread. This seemed to be a stack in this case. So both of our tanks stack up. Then there is going to be a tower, a second tower in the middle that requires 4 players. This time around, everybody with 2 stacks needs to go in. And then after that tower explodes, everybody should have 3 stacks at this point. We all spread around the boss in our pre-assigned positions. And then we all get a cleave, and that is the end of this mechanic. This is the last super big mechanic that the boss does basically before, well, technically the final mechanic is kind of hard as well. But we'll take it again from the top. So, Ice-Lit Dragon Song. Everybody pre-positioned. Also, the reason why me and my machinist switched from the 1 and the 2 marker before is because on the very first mechanic, I used to always go right to bait my AoE, and he always went left to bait his AoE that chased him. So that is why I end up on 1 and he ends up on the 2 marker. But basically just like decide it with your team where you want to go basically. Again, Ice-Lit Dragon Song also does a lot of damage, so make sure you shield and use mitigation for that. As you can see, we had Divine Veil as well as the strong Astro Shields from neutral sect, and we still took a decent amount of damage. And I believe, oh no, there was no soil. So, tanks and healers on cardinals, tanks north-south, healers east-west, all of the DPS on their cardinals, they drop their AoEs. AoEs go out, all of the DPS run middle. The healers cleanse everyone from their freeze AoE or from their freeze debuff except the 2 tanks. The towers go out. DPS go north and south, they get knocked back. Healers get knocked back into their towers. Then the tanks get unfrozen and they move into the middle tower. Then the AoEs on the side go out. The middle tower explodes. All of the DPS, or the tower on the healers explode as well, so basically the healer tower and the middle tower explode at the same time. All of the DPS are basically baiting their AoEs, and then our tanks are gonna either stack up or spread out, depending on if it is a true or a false. And then everybody that is left over with 2 stacks is gonna jump into the middle tower explodes, and then we all go into our predetermined spread positions to bait the final cleaves. And that is the end of Icelit Dragon Song. Can take a few times to get this mechanic done, but once you know everything that's going on, I believe that this one is a lot easier than the first one that you do with the 4 towers and the orbs and the chains and that kind of stuff. Now we are going to be positioning Shiva all the way north, because there will always be a red mirror that spawns here. Reason why we position here is because Shiva is going to be transforming back into normal Shiva, meaning that she's going to freeze the whole arena. And as you remembered when I said, you can slide across the arena, but only if you are completely at the edge and you go through the middle. So, since she's transforming into normal Shiva, we know now that this mirror is going to freeze the whole arena. And now Shiva is going to, as you can see, come to me Refulgence, transform back into Refulgence, thus spawning Akrais on the place where everybody was positioned. So, soon as the wings go out, we slide across the arena, and then we have the Akrais go out there, and then make sure that you don't like move at all, because if you just move again, you're most likely going to fly off. The reason why our Ninja and our Dragoon were here was because they used their gap closers and that kind of stuff. As soon as when the ice is on the arena, you can still use gap closers and movement abilities. You just can't actually walk, I guess you could say. So stuff like Sukuchi, Dragonfire Dive, Elusive Jump, Korakor, Displacement, all of that kind of stuff, you can use it. But just make sure that you don't actually walk, because the walking is what makes you slide across the arena. And then we are going to be going into the very final mechanic of this fight, which is Worm's Lament number 2. If you remember Worm's Lament from the beginning of phase 2, this would place red and blue debuffs on all of your party members. This time it's going to do it again, but a little bit different. So this time around, I'll let it finish its cast. It also does damage, by the way, so make sure that you're healed up for this. This time around, it is going to be giving 2 red debuffs to the tanks, 2 blue debuffs to the healers, and then your DPS also get 2 reds and 2 blues. This is always fixed, so the timers on these are fixed as well. So when you know you're a tank or a healer or a DPS, you know what role you have. So you don't need to pay attention to the timer on this one. You just need to know, I am this role, so I'm gonna do this. In this case, our tanks are the red ones, so they're going to be popping their heads first. The healers are the blue ones, so they pop their heads second. This is fixed, so for tanks and healers, you always have the same role. For DPS, you need to pay attention to which color debuff you get, because DPS is completely random. We've had runs where it's melee is red, and then ranged blue. We've had melee and ranged blue, we have melee and caster red, like we've had basically all of the combinations you can get. So it's only for tanks and healers that you're fixed. Tanks red, healers blue, DPS, it's random what you get. So first thing that she does is Morn. Again, be in the same groups that you were before. We have our party in this case on the back and the other party is on the front. I personally don't like doing it this way. I would have much preferred 3 and 4 and then have the north side for the tanks to take their Morn fast, but it's just the way my group does it. So that's how we did it. So because Morn has now cast like 3 times or something like that, this one is gonna hit for 5 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once the 5th one hits, tanks run out, pop their heads. As soon as they pop their heads, tank swap, because one tank is gonna get the Morn Fa, and that is always the tank that is tanking the boss at that point. So our paladin is here popping hallowed ground, and then he's gonna run away. The reason why I don't like this positioning is because our tank can't hit the boss from here, basically. So he's just gonna hang out there, run a little bit, because during this Morn Fa cast, our 2 healers are going to be grabbing the little puddles that are left behind. So Morn Fa went off somewhere here in the back of the map. Our healers grabbed their debuff, and now they are moving back towards the middle for Morn version 2. So this time it's gonna hit 6 times. 3, 4, 5, 6. Red DPS, go pop their heads. What we like to do here is we just call it out. I'm going Delta, I am going Beta, to make it sure that they know where they're going, because with the DPS there is variance. Tanks and healers can just assign themselves, like I'm going north, I'm going south. DPS need to do it on the fly, so that's why we call it out right here. So our DPS pop the heads, Morn Fa on our tank. This time our tank is in the middle of the boss, so make sure that you're max melee. And then our other DPS go and pick up their little thing. And then we have the third Morn, which is going to hit 7 times now. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we have a final and third Morn Afa. Now, since we used tank invulns for the first and second Morn Afa, we can just blow all of our mitigation on this one. Soil, shields, shake, divine veil, whatever you might want to have. Throw it on this one. Well, of course, you might want to use some mitigation for the Morns as well. But basically, any mitigation that you have left, just blow it on the final Morn Afa. Because there's not going to be any more damage after this. Oh, there is one important thing that I forgot to mention. Whenever Shiva is in her Refulgence form, she also hits the first and second in aggro at the same time, so kind of like Leviathan Savage. So always make sure both of your tanks are first and second in aggro, because otherwise she's gonna literally one-shot your DPS and healers. So tanks always first and second in aggro when she's in Refulgence form, because they're both going to be taking auto attacks. Sorry, I forgot to mention that before, but I kind of forgot about it. But yeah, that's pretty much the last mechanic that she's going to do from here on out. There is a lot of time until she goes into her Enrage, which is going to be casting Mirror across the whole arena. And then she's going to be doing that half arena cleave again, which is the Hallowed Wings. So just make sure you stand behind her and then just hope you kill her in this time. Unfortunately enough, my group ended up not killing her on this run. We had a I think a 0.8% Enrage or something like that. But hopefully later down the line tonight we'll be able to clear this fight. I know I don't usually like to make guides when I haven't cleared the fight yet, but since we got so close so many times, I was like, you know what, might as well make the guide for people that are working on the fight right now, rather than wait until later tonight, tomorrow, or maybe even next week if we don't manage to clear it this week, to bring out the guide basically. So I just wanted to make sure that it was out for you guys to help you out as well. But that's pretty much the whole fight of Shiva. An incredibly fun fight, a pretty long fight, but also a pretty difficult fight as well. So if there's any more questions about any of the mechanics, if there's something that I might have forgotten to speak about, definitely let me know in the comments, hit me up on Discord, anything like that, and I'll be sure to get back to you with a maybe better explanation than I did in this video. But I hope it was helpful. Good luck on your clears. If anything's missing, make sure you ask me in the comments and stuff like that, but I'll see you in the next one.